going to get started. Today's session is on keeping on top of online teaching. My name's Laurie Wilson. I'm a learning technologist at the English Language Teaching Centre at the University of Sheffield. And in today's session, I'm going to be sharing some of my top tips for how we can move from how me and David have been feeling over the last 15 minutes through to a more sort of zen, chilled out and on top frame of mind. So in the session, I'm going to focus on 4 main areas. These are all quite simple tips, but they're simple things that can make a big difference. First thing, I'm a learning technologist. My background's in teaching and in linguistics. So I'm going to talk a little bit about knowing the language. Second thing I want to look at is some keyboard shortcuts, something you'll find during the session that I'm very keen on. I find it's a really good way to sort of keep yourself on top when you're teaching. Third thing we'll look at is using your bookmarks. This is something that's available on all web browsers, but we're particularly going to focus today on the Chrome browser. And finally, sticking with the Chrome browser, I'm going to talk about some useful Chrome extensions. I won't tell you what an extension is now because I'd be spoiling a question from later on in the presentation, but you will find out more about this later. Like I said, these things, they're not big, they're not difficult, they're quite simple little fixes that you can do, which when added all together give you a lot more control over what you're doing online. Okay, so to start, like I said, my background's in linguistics and in language teaching. So for me, language is a really important thing of whatever I'm doing. Quote from linguistic relativism here, the idea being that it's quite hard to understand something if we don't have the language to talk about it. So what point I'd like to make here is that with computer language, with computers, there's loads and loads of terminology and words and phrases that we hear. And in order to sort of be in control when we're teaching online, we need to have some knowledge of this language. I'm a learning technologist. I would say on the CEF scale of computer language, I'm probably somewhere about an A2, and that's good enough for me. So what I'm going to do, just to give you an idea of the kind of language I'm talking about, I'm just going to post a little activity in the chat for you. So I'll just put a little activity into the chat. I've lost the chat box. So when you get this, what I'd like you to do is just, you'll see activities there on the screen. Okay. And I'll be able to share this link with you in 1 second. So this is obviously what happens when you change platforms at the very last minute. Everything goes where you didn't want it to be. So you should be able to see the activity on the screen. So whilst we're waiting for me to find this link, if you could just match in your mind, see if you can match these sort of basic computer terms up. Okay, I've lost my screen from here. All going wrong. I can just give you my screen back. Sorry about that. So we'll put the link into the chat now. Supposedly. Okay. How many problems can you have in one session? Okay, so if you go into this, it'll just give you a quick matching activity, just like you to match the computer terminology to the definitions. And once you've done that, it'll give you instant feedback on this, so you'll be able to see it straight away. Okay, so I'll just put it in there now. I think we've got a slight delay. You should have the link now. Okay, so if you've got that, just quickly match the terms to the definitions. Hopefully there's nothing that you haven't heard here before. I've chosen some quite high frequency ones, the ones that we see quite often. Okay, so the reason to put this up is just to get you thinking about sort of simple things that we can do to make life a bit easier teaching online. And obviously, as we tell our students all the time, it's not just knowing what the words mean and being able to check the meaning of the words, it's also knowing how to use them. So when you do encounter new sort of computer terminology, obviously this one probably isn't new for any of you, but when you do come across new words, find out what they mean, and also have a think about what these words collocate with. 7 out of 7, very good, Simon. Glad to hear. So think about how you use this language. Again, it's a simple step, and it's something that we can be doing steadily over time. Unfortunately, as language teachers, it's an area in which we already have quite a lot of expertise. We know how to find out the meanings of the words. We know how to check how to use them. So it's a way we can use our strengths to help us feel more in control online. Okay, so moving on. Second thing I'd like to look at is keyboard shortcuts. So basically anything you can do on a computer using a mouse, you can also do on a computer using a keyboard. This is how people who use screen readers are accessing the internet, how they're accessing everything on their computer. So there's a keyboard shortcut for pretty much anything. And just want to share my top 10 with you here. And one thing to point out before we start, pretty much all of these keyboard shortcuts begin by holding either Control or Alt down on your keyboard. So you need to hold Control or Alt first and then press another key. And whilst I'm talking through these, please do try these shortcuts out while I'm talking. Feel free to be opening another tab and play around with them whilst I'm talking. So, number one, to give you another tab to play around in, if you hold Control and T, Control and T should open a new browser tab. It's on N. If you'd use Control and N, this will open a new browser window. Okay, so give this a try. Well, if you're on a PC, a lot of these shortcuts do work on a Mac as well. But yes, I am focusing mostly on Windows shortcuts here. And if you're on a phone, obviously there aren't any keyboard shortcuts, phone or a tablet, but next time you're on a device with a keyboard, do have a go at these. Okay. Please, if you're using a Mac and you find they don't work, let me know any of these that don't work when you post them, when you try them. Okay, what's happened to my numbers? Okay, this is one of my favorites. If you hold down Alt and then press Tab, this allows you to flick between two tabs on your screen. So if you hold down Alt and then press Tab, it lets you move between different windows that you've got open on the screen. Control and T in PowerPoint shows the taskbar. Yes, it's nice. This is a point worth remembering that some of these shortcuts will have different functions depending on what program you're using. Okay. Number 3, you've got our numbers back in line now. Another very useful one, Control, Shift and N will open a new incognito browser window. So as you'll know from the previous activity, an incognito window, it's kind of like a hidden window, and very useful if you're signed into something like Chrome and you want to test something out without being signed into your account. So you want to see how something's going to look from your student's perspective, and you can sign into open an incognito window and then share your link or whatever there. So Control Shift N, very quick and easy way to open a new incognito window. Number 4, we've already had that. I don't know what happened to the numbers there. Number 5 is the one that I think most people are familiar with, but it's still very useful. Control and C to copy, Control and X to cut, and Control and V to paste. These work off most word processing software. So it's the same on Google Docs and the same on Word as well. Okay, again, another useful one if you're word processing is to use Control and then bold I, so B, I, or U, and this will give you bold, italics, or underline. Okay. Next one, I've put a star for this. This is my favorite keyboard shortcut. I use this, I don't know how many times a day, but Control and Z will undo the last thing you've done. And this seems to work across programs on lots of different things. So when you've made a mistake, as I often do, don't panic, hit Control and Z, and it'll just undo the last thing. I find in terms of feeling in control, this just gives me the security of knowing that almost any mistake I make can be undone with a little click on the keyboard. I don't need to use the mouse and try and find out what's happened. I can just undo it with Control and Z. Shortcut I've been using a lot recently, putting stuff onto the WordPress site, is often we need to remove the formatting from something if we're copying it across onto a different page or copying it from a document onto the website. And if you highlight text and then use Control and space, it will remove any formatting from the text. So if the text's in bold, it will remove the bold. If it's been put in a funny font, it will remove that font and put it to whatever the default font is on your program. But it's a really, particularly if you're copying and pasting a lot, it's a very quick way to remove the formatting. It's one lots of students who've submitted copied and pasted essays to me over the years. If they'd known how to do Control and space to make it all look the same, they wouldn't have got caught quite so easily. Number 9 is another really useful one, is again, if you're writing in an email or in a document and you want to add a hyperlink, you can highlight the text you want to make your link and then use Control and K, and this will give you the option of adding a link to that bit of text. Again, really useful one. Just helps to make sort of nice, tidy documents. For example, you can say click here and turn the here into the link. And finally, number 10, it's another one I use a lot. Often if you get a link and then you click on it, it will open in the tab you were already in, making the work you were doing, the page you were on, disappear. If you hold down Control whenever you click on a link, it always opens the link into a new tab. Can be very useful just to help you keep organized and make sure that you don't accidentally close any pages or have any pages you want to see disappear. Okay, So these are probably my 10 most frequently used keyboard shortcuts. There'll be a few other shortcuts that'll show up during the next half an hour. I'll mention them where relevant. Barbara, I'm glad you've learned a few new ones. I find I'm still learning new shortcuts all the time. If you do Google keyboard shortcuts, you can find long lists that'll be relevant for whatever it is you're using. Also, if you're using a new program like Blackboard or Google Meet or Zoom, it will have its own set of keyboard shortcuts that you can also learn. Okay, so moving on, the next thing I'd like to talk about is using your bookmarks. So bookmarks are a way of, as the name would suggest, a way of marking web pages. If you're using the Chrome browser, your bookmarks look like this. If you're using Firefox or Edge or Safari, bookmarks work in a very, very similar way. I usually use Chrome, so this is what I'm going to focus on here, but everything I'm saying does apply to other browsers. So, key things for bookmarks. I think everybody's familiar with clicking the star at the end of the address bar, and this adds your bookmark to the browser. It will then show, once you've added it, in the bookmarks bar. And you also have the option to access the Bookmark Manager, which will let you see what bookmarks you've got and will allow you to organize them. Okay, so just for a little bit of practice, what I'd like to do, I'd like you just to open a web page. For an example, I've put our Training Foundry site here. I'll give you the link to that in the chat. So again, what I'd like to do is just go on and mark the, use the star to mark the, to bookmark the page. Sorry, I'll put the link in now. Okay, once you've bookmarked a page, if you can't see it in the bookmarks bar, of course, there is a shortcut for it. If you hold Control, press Shift and B, this will either show or hide your bookmarks bar. So if you can't see the bookmarks bar, use Control, Shift and B. And this definitely works on Chrome. I think it also works on Firefox. I can't comment on other browsers. Okay. Also, if you want to bookmark a tab you're on at any point in time, just use Control and D, and this will help you to bookmark, or this will bookmark a tab for you without needing to click the little star. Command Shift and B on Mac. Cool. Cheers, David. Once you've bookmarked the web page, it'll show in your bookmark bar, but you can edit the name of it. And I find this very useful, particularly because I like to squeeze lots onto my bookmark bar, and often it'll come with a slightly too long a name. So if you right click on the item in your bookmark bar and then select Edit, this gives you the option to change the name of your bookmark. You'll see it also allows you to save the bookmark into different places in your sort of bookmark system. Very useful thing you can do is create folders in your bookmarks. So you can do this either by right-clicking on the bookmark bar and selecting Add Folder, or you can do it, as we saw in step 3, when you're adding a new bookmark, you can create a folder there. And what I tend to do is have a folder for each sort of class I'm teaching or each project I'm working on, and then I'll keep all the bookmarks relevant to that within that folder. And you can then, to open your bookmarks, if you hold down Control when you click on a bookmark, it'll open it in a new tab. And one I find really useful is that if you hold down Control and click on a folder that you've created, it'll open everything in that folder. So, for example, when my VR class is about to start, I'll hold down Control, click on the VR folder, and all of the materials that I've bookmarked for that week's lesson will show up instantly. So it saves me ever having to sort of hunt about trying to remember where I've put things. So I would, if you're not using folders in your bookmarks already, I would highly recommend this as a way of just keeping everything organized and being able to get a whole set of windows open all at the same time. And you can also, if you use Control, Shift and O, this will open the Bookmark Manager, and this allows you to delete bookmarks or to move them into other folders. Okay. So I find bookmarks, it's a really easy way of, again, giving yourself a bit more control over what you're doing. And it's just sort of being organized so that you're never hunting around during a lesson trying to find a link. You've got everything there at the touch of a button. It does make life a lot easier. And my usual thing is things that I click on a sort of multiple times a day basis, I have as individual bookmarks. So you can see here, like Google Drive, my calendar, and things that I have related to specific projects, I tend to put into folders. Okay, which leads us on to the last area I want to talk about today, which is the Chrome extensions. So as you saw from the matching activity earlier, extensions are kind of like little add-ons that we can put into the browser, which just give us a little bit more control. Sorry, I'm getting attacked by my cat here. Okay, so I'm going to show you 4 of my favorite extensions. And extensions show up at the top right of your browser in Chrome, and they show up just as little icons just next to the star that we used for the bookmarks bar. And the first one I'd like to talk about is something called Duelist. Has anybody heard of this or seen this before? No? Okay, so Duelist is a tool, an extension that allows you to split your screen when you're using Chrome. So if you add Duelist to the browser and then you click on the Duelist icon, it gives you these options of different ways that you can split your screen. So you can have a 50-50 split. For example, if you want 2 tabs shown equally, or if you want something like the chat on a third of your screen, and then your lesson on the main part of your screen, you can split it as 30-70. And I find particularly if you're teaching, you just have, if you're teaching on one screen, this can be really useful, say if you're having to flick between different tabs. Another thing I like about Duelist is if you can see the little blue bookmark icon there, you can actually set it up so that you can have pages bookmarked on Duelist. So if I clicked on that blue icon, what would happen is on 40% of the screen, I think that blue icon is actually the football scores. So on 40% of the screen, I would have the football scores show up, and on the other 60% of my screen, I would have whatever I was working on. But it's a really good, really quick, easy way of splitting your screen, being able to see two things at once. And here's an example of what it ends up looking like. And you just have two things split equally across your screen. Okay, and the next one I wanted to look at, particularly useful for anybody who is teaching EAP or anybody who is studying themselves. I'm studying myself at the moment. I use this a lot when I'm studying. So the Google Scholar button is an extension that allows you to search in Google Scholar directly from a web page. So when you click the Google Scholar button extension in the top right corner of your screen, it brings up this little Google Scholar search bar. And what you can do is if you're reading a PDF online or you're reading an article online, you can just highlight text in the article and then click in the Google Scholar bar and it'll search to find this article for you. So I use this a lot if I'm reading an article and I see a reference that I think looks particularly interesting. I'll highlight it and then I can go straight to the article via Google Scholar. Obviously, Google Scholar is not 100% perfect. You can't always find the article, but particularly if you've linked it up with your, if you're at a university, you can link it up with your institution's library, and then you can access pretty much all articles that you'd need directly from a reference like this. So if you are studying, I highly recommend this. If you're teaching EAP, it's a really good one to get your students using. It can also be very useful if you want to check students' references in an essay. So if you notice students have referenced a certain paper, you want to check that it is actually what they claim it is, and you can, using this Scholar button, is a really quick and easy way to do that. Okay, and number 3 in the Chrome extensions is one that I actually only found out about a week ago, and it's already changed my life. This is a little extension called Clipboard History Pro. It says it's the best productivity tool. I'm not sure if it's the best, but it is certainly up there. This is a really useful little extension. And what it does is it allows you to access everything that was on your clipboard. So everything you've copied and pasted over the last, it seems to go back days. I think it might even go back weeks. So when you click on this, on the extension, you'll be able to see a list of everything that's been on your clipboard the last few days. You can then, Jane, I'll talk about this in 1 second. I can help you with this in 1 second. Okay, so with the clipboard, little things you can do is you can, as well as just, if you click on the text, it will then copy it onto your clipboard so you can then paste it somewhere. You can also go in and edit it if you want to tweak something you've copied and pasted. It also allows you to set favorites. So if you're doing something like writing reports and you find you're using the same phrases regularly, of course, not that anybody copies and pastes when writing reports, but for this kind of thing, you can save certain things on the clipboard as favorite phrases, and then you can go back in. I've got a few web addresses that I was using regularly here. So you can go back in and have really quick access to these regular things that you might want to paste. So I'd highly, highly recommend this Clipboard History Pro extension. Thank you, David, sharing the app there. Yeah, all of these extensions you can find in the Chrome store. They're all free. I've never come across one that you've had to pay for yet. And yeah, if you just go into the Chrome store and search for the ones that we've mentioned. Next one I want to look at is a screenshot tool There are lots and lots of these out there. It's a case of sort of playing around with them and finding the one that works best for you. This one is quite simply called Screenshot, I quite like. And what's good about this one is when you click the screenshot button, it automatically downloads a screenshot of whatever's on your browser at that point in time. So it automatically downloads it onto your computer. And then what I particularly like about this one is because it's just downloaded it and then it'll open as a photo, you can go straight in and edit it. So if you only want to take a small part of the entire screen, you can go in and just crop out the section that you wanted. So there are lots of other screenshot tools available. I'm not going to say for sure that this is the best one out there, but it's probably the best one, or it's my favorite one that I've used. Partly because I like how it downloads instantly, and also because I like the option of being able to crop out certain bits of the picture. Okay, the other thing with this screenshot tool, going back to keyboard shortcuts, is once you've added this to your browser, you can just hit Alt and P and it'll take a screenshot and automatically download it to your computer of whatever's on your screen at the time. So again, really handy if you're teaching and you want to take a quick screenshot of something that's going on in the lesson. You can do this without having to move your mouse, without having to change anything. Just hit Alt and P. It says there's only 5,000 plus users for this one. I imagine it will increase, but please give it a go. As you might guess, seeing as these are extensions for the Chrome browser, there are a lot of Google extensions available. There are 5 here on the screen that I think are all well worth a try. Google Keep, just kind of like it's almost like a notebook tool you can use for saving information. Very useful. And their extension's really good because you can just make quick notes or quickly save web pages. The one called Link to Text Fragment allows you to share links to specific, even like a sentence within a text. So if you wanted to share a web page with your students, but you didn't want to have them having to scan through to find specific information, you can share a link to a specific word or sentence within a web page. And it'd be quite nice for highlighting language in use, or nice just for saving time to get people to see what you want them to see. And there's also extensions for all of the big Google tools like Drive, Translate, Google Mail, all really handy to have. And because there's so many extensions, you can add them. You do need to have to keep them managed. So to manage your extensions, next to the star in your browser, you should see a small jigsaw piece. This jigsaw piece is the extensions icon. When you click on this, it'll give you a list of all the extensions you've got on your computer. If you have them pinned, so if you click the pin button, this means they'll show on your browser. So obviously any you're using frequently, it's worth having them shown on the browser. Any that you only use occasionally, perhaps leave them unpinned. If you click on the 3 dots, it will give you the option of removing the extension. So any you've put on, you've tried, you didn't like, it's easy enough to remove them. Okay, so that is extensions. Again, like with all the things mentioned today, they're not difficult to use. They're not going to sort of change the world for you individually, but using lots of them together will just help to give you control over so many different areas of your teaching. Okay, my voice is going rapidly. So I'm going to hand over to you. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to share a link in the chat to a Padlet. And what I'd like you to do is go into the Padlet, and any great tips that you have and for little time-saving things that you can do to sort of stay in control with your teaching, and please just post them in the Padlet. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with Padlet, to post a message, you'll just need to click the little pink icon in the bottom right corner, and that'll allow you to post the message. So if you could just go into the Padlet now, click the pink button, and then if you just like any tips that you have that you'd like to share, please put them in there. We just have about 5 minutes to add any messages that you'd like to share. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer with what remains of my voice. Okay, I've got a few tips being posted in here. One saying in PowerPoint display mode, Control-T will reveal your taskbar, and Control-L will show the laser pointer. It's a handy one if you're using PowerPoint. So let's share that in the chat. I can do that. There we go. I'm just going to put these links that I've put on the page. David's already put the Chrome extensions one, so I'll just put the computer terminology one in the chat. This, I think there will be other dictionaries of computer terminology online, and I quite like this one because it's got quite a good search function on it. Some other useful ones, useful tips, for class, any links you want to share with your class, generate them in advance and paste them all in a doc for easy access. Or as Peter says, send them before the class, and then it gives the students a chance to have a look at what's coming up before the lesson starts. Yeah, two really good pieces of advice. Have all your documents open before class, Sue says. Yes, I agree with that. I think it's good to have them. I don't know if I have them all open because I tend to get buried in tabs, but I'll always have it in the materials for a lesson in a bookmark folder that I can then just quickly open. Lesson Padlet. Yeah, having a sort of kind of using Padlet as a VLE almost has been suggested there. So any docs that your students need to access, you can arrange them in a Padlet. Loom, yes, quite a popular tool. Yeah, somebody suggesting using the two devices. Very handy if you haven't got two screens. It can be very useful to be presenting off your phone whilst teaching on your computer. Possible to do it by being signed into two signed into whatever your video conferencing software is twice. Okay, and please do keep posting in the Padlet if you have any more suggestions. I'm just going to talk through the last couple of minutes of presentation. Whilst you're doing that, I'll keep an eye on what's going up there. Okay, so hopefully these things, these little tips will help you to feel more in control when you're teaching. It's, like I said, no one of them is going to revolutionize your world for you, though that clipboard one's come quite close for me. But used together and used well, these little things add up to sort of having really good control, kind of really good classroom management, essentially, when you're teaching. A couple of last things just to mention before we go. You were all on the Training Foundry website to start with. We were trying to live stream through the website, but encountered some technical difficulties, as those of you who are here at the start will have noticed. So apologies again about that. We'll figure out what went wrong before next time. A couple of things on the website, probably at some point next week, there'll be a blog post to accompany this presentation. It'll just give essentially some of the same information again, but in written form. I'll embed this PowerPoint on there. So I'll embed the PowerPoint onto it, so you'll be able to access this again. So please, next week, go on to the Training Foundry site, click where it says blog, and just have a look at the accompanying post to this. You'll also see lots of other blog posts that are already there. I think almost all authored by David, but some really interesting ones, particularly one relating to the webinar from a couple of weeks ago about different kind of tools you can use for creating sort of asynchronous or flipped materials, actually creating good online materials for students. We've also got a couple of courses coming up soon on the Training Foundry site. We've got the Instructional Design for Language Teachers course, which again is about creating online materials, looks at lots of useful tools and lots of sort of useful tips and tricks about how to create effective materials for your students. And we also have the long-running, very successful Learning Technologies in EAP course running, which is full of tips for not just keeping on top, but sort of raising the top of your online teaching. So please, if you're interested, have a look at the details about these courses on our website. Okay. So that's all I have to say for today. Thank you very much for bearing with us at the start when things weren't running quite as smoothly as we'd hoped. And thank you for joining us on Zoom. And I hope to see some of you soon. There's some familiar names there who I might see in the summer on our pre-sessional. And for the rest of you, very nice to have met you and hope to see you again soon. Right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.